Good day, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining the Rapid Change Management webinar series, episode number 14, Breaking the Layoff Loop, Advancing Strategic Workforce Planning in the Age of AI. I am Brennan German, president of Bright Talent. I'll be your host and facilitator today. And I have our guest speaker here, Temi Ariyo. And before I properly introduce her, let me just kind of give you context to this webinar. So Rapid Change Management Series webinar can be found on our website at Bright's webinars. And this webinar is being recorded, so it will show up there on demand after we're done with this session. And that's also where you'll find all the other episodes with the ability to watch those on demand as well. So we invite you to go check that out. This webinar is 30 minutes in length. We make it concise, compact, but full of a lot of information. So Temi and I will cover a lot of ground, and hopefully you'll have a chance to listen to it and come back to it as we move along here. So Temi, I'm going to introduce you now. So Temi Ariyo is a people analytics expert with a strong grounding in organizational science. Her work spans advanced analytics, employee listening, predictive workforce planning, and the design of enterprise-level people data infrastructure for companies such as PwC, Dexcom, J&J, and Atlassian. Her work focuses on helping organizations move beyond static reporting toward integrative, predictive workforce insights that better connect people, finance, and operations. So Temi, thank you again for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Brennan.
So glad you're here. So let's set the table. This planning to layoff loop is not simply a market dynamic. It is often a reflection of how workforce decisions are made, how frequently they're revisited, and how well they are connected to financial and operational realities. In contrast, leading organizations treat workforce planning as an ongoing business discipline, more aligned with financial forecasting than static annual planning. These organizations are building integrated systems that connect people data with finance and operations, and continuous informed decision-making and reducing the need for large-scale corrective actions. To clarify, this conversation is not about eliminating layoffs entirely, but it's about creating more informed, continuous workforce planning processes that reduce reactive decision-making. I think that's an important disclaimer. Temi, in her career, has watched these cycles play out in real time, and many times she's left wondering, why didn't they trust the data more and make more informed decisions sooner? Hence the title of today's webinar, Breaking the Layoff Loop, Advancing SWP in the Age of AI. And we're going to cover two topics just to keep us on track. One is going to how to move from annual planning to continuous workforce management. And then the other is building out the workforce system. So Temi, we'll just start at the top there, from annual planning to continuous workforce management. Why do you think so many organizations treat workforce planning as an annual exercise instead of an ongoing business discipline?
I think historically workforce planning evolved as an HR process rather than an operational forecasting discipline. And so many organizations still tie it to annual budgeting cycles instead of treating it like a living business system. So then the challenge then becomes, is that business conditions, don't move annually anymore. So now with market demands and labor costs and just all these things shifting continuously. So what I often see is that organizations revisit workforce planning only during moments of high pressure. So like budget seasons, restructuring, things like that. And instead of maintaining ongoing visibility into workforce health and business alignment, they're kind of just reacting. And then another issue is the fragmentation of all of our systems. So business, finance, operations, they often operate from different data sets and different assumptions. So even when organizations want to plan continuously, the infrastructure and operating model is just not designed for it.
Yeah, it's a great point because we're often all focused on our own data sets. We're not necessarily, we're talking about it in meetings, but we're not actually perhaps
Yeah.
collaborating as tightly as we should. And we definitely don't have the data integrated
Yeah.
like we should. So that's kind of leading to the next question. What
Mhm.
tends to break when workforce planning is only revisited once or twice a year?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I think breaks is just that the timing for making decisions. So when the organizations only evaluate workforce dynamics periodically, then they miss like that gradual trend, those signals that come that come gradually,
Mm-hmm.
and then that becomes like a major organization correction later. So, overhiring, instead of noticing that we're overhiring earlier
Yeah.
in the process, we don't notice until later, and then that's followed by layoffs, for example. So in many cases, layoffs are it's just not really the first failure. They're just like the final thing, big event that happens from disconnected planning processes upstream.
Upstream. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because I, as a business owner, am managing my own finances and cash flow forecast, and I couldn't imagine only doing that twice a year,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and then not being
That
able
would
to
be a big
react.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to your point, we build these hiring plans at the beginning of the year, and we start
Mhm.
moving through them, and we're not
Mhm.
always stopping pause either quarterly to make sure that that plan still makes sense according to
Mhm.
budget. And I think, but I've heard it say like we purge and binge. So we purge, we
Mhm.
grow, but
Yeah.
as soon as it slows down and everybody's surprised, then we start letting go again.
Yeah.
I think being a bit more methodical, like you're saying, on a quarterly basis, or even some cases monthly. I mean, that's just
Monthly,
how
yeah.
responsive the market is. So
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. So you've worked with organizations building workforce dashboards and integrated planning systems. What does a continuous workforce planning model actually look like in practice?
So I think a mature model has three characteristics.
Mm,
So the first being workforce data being integrated with operational and financial data. So instead of sitting in isolation, in other HR dashboards, they are integrated together. So meaning like people analytics needs to be involved with workforce planning.
mhm.
The second thing, I think leaders monitor workforce indicators, they need to monitor it continuously rather than annually. So like hirings, attrition hotspots, labor trends, workload distribution, stuff like that, skills as well. Those need
Yeah.
to be monitored continuously instead of, annually or, twice a year. It needs to happen more often to go with the flow of the business. And then third, organizational goals need to be the compass that drives the workforce analytics. So, in order to align with the business has to like set those goals. It's easier to spot trends that threaten the business goals when they're constantly checking workforce patterns against specific thresholds. So that keeps us on track when it comes to reaching these business goals.
Yeah, it's a great point because obviously there's sales targets, which drives a lot of this. And if these
Mhm.
sales target, like we're seeing
Yeah.
now, right? There's some inconsistency or challenges in this market the last couple of years. If you're not hitting sales goals, then really
Mhm.
that's the simplest. That should be a flag that maybe we shouldn't be hiring as many people and to revisit that as an example.
Mhm. Yeah, I wish the way that we think of workforce planning was as rigorous as the way that we monitor sales, as we monitor like that kind finance. Like I wish it was as rigorous because they all interact with each other anyway. And the same rigor that we approach sales with, I wish that we would do that with workforce planning because they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and that's my next question. So, in your experience, how does
Mhm.
an effective partnership between HR, finance, and
Mm,
ops, and I guess you're just adding a fourth there, sales too,
yeah.
how does that partnership, is it effective for workforce planning work? How can we, how, if I'm an HR leader looking at
Yeah.
this, how could I develop a better relationship with these functions so that we're talking about the necessary data so we're all making better informed decisions and less reactionary?
Yeah, I think the best partnerships happen when the workforce planning stops being seen as like an HR responsibility and starts becoming more of like a shared business responsibility. So
Mm,
like HR will bring the workforce intelligence, finance brings like cost modeling, forecasting, and the rigor that comes with that. And then like ops will bring like business knowledge and execution and things like that. And then like how you mentioned with sales as well, sales brings those hard numbers as in like what's going on in real time now. And everybody has their part, but if we can just start to work together and share that information with each other, then I think that would take us leaps forward in terms of being like effective partnership.
yeah.
Yeah, that's how I
And
feel. Yeah.
where have you, I think of part of the reason they're probably not meeting is there a
Mhm.
level of siloed, which stems from maybe a level of
Yeah.
trust with each other. And so,
Yeah.
so you've seen it done well and you've seen it not done well. Where you're seeing it done well, how do you think that trust is established between the functions?
Yeah. So I think in organizations where it is done well, or at least like they're more mature about their data, their people data as well, and they already have like a workforce planning, some sort of structure. That trust comes with communication. So making sure that if I am HR data, just in general, is very sensitive, right? Just in nature,
Mhm. Right.
and finance information can also be extremely sensitive. So there is a little bit of secrecy when it comes to sharing that information. But when we're all coming together for the same goal, which is to make sure that we are in line with the business and that the planning is continuous and we're constantly sharing, constantly communicating and breaking down those governance barriers. Obviously, like, the people who are allowed to see things are the ones who are going to be seeing things if you vet that. But
Yes.
the idea is that we're all one team and we're all together to get the same goal, which is to make sure that the workforce planning is as accurate and as like forthcoming as possible. So
Yeah.
I think that's when it's done well, it looks like that.
Yeah. Everybody focused on the same mission. They understand why
Mhm.
they're sharing the data. There's a goal, there's a reason.
Yeah,
I think that's a great
exactly.
point. And then just to touch on this last one in this section, we often hear layoffs attributed to market conditions,
Mm.
but how much of workforce instability is actually tied to planning cadence and decision-making process? So we kind of touched on that, but maybe there's a couple of ideas, where we could actually say, okay, maybe monthly is too much, but quarterly we're committed. But then what other
Mhm.
possible triggers are there where we have to stop and look at this information? So how much can
Mhm.
we improve that cadence so that we're making more informed decisions?
Yeah, I think a lot of organizations underestimate how much workforce instability comes from like that delayed visibility and the slow
Mm,
planning cycles. I think a lot of large scale corrections happen because organizations lacked integrated insights early enough
mm,
to make those smaller adjustments sooner. So when planning happens continuously, organizations can like look at those trends, those slow hiring, or slow hiring gradually. So, like you were saying before with sales, oh, we didn't hit our sales number. How does that affect the headcount that we have planned for the rest of the year? Okay, maybe we don't hire as much. Maybe we have to look and reorganize things, move things around. That is very powerful insight to know and to have. And if we have things in siloed places and they're not all talking to each other, it's very hard to know um, it's very hard to pinpoint when those things are happening and how it affects the rest of the business. So I don't think we can make layoffs disappear, but I do think that we can make them less frequent,
Yeah.
with like this type of approach to workforce analytics, which is all of us together, all of those key elements of what makes the workforce work. Um, we all
Yeah.
can get together and share things together, communicate. Then I think we can significantly really reduce the layoffs that come from poor planning.
Yeah, clearly with the advancements of AI, and we're starting to see
Mhm,
some of the limitations now, but with the advancements of the I mean, the fluidity of the labor market is amazing.
mhm,
In the sense of some of it's good. You see massive hiring elsewhere, and then you see massive reductions elsewhere. So to
yeah.
have that ability to move, I think of when I would be managing a budget when I was in a corporation and I had my partner as a financial analyst and we would meet
Mhm,
regularly. People
mhm,
analytics has to be in that same conversation. And I think
exactly.
that's what's missing there from a
Yeah.
practical standpoint. So
Yeah.
this is probably a good bridge. How about building the workforce system? I think, okay, we've talked about some of the
Yeah.
challenges and working within it or working around it. So now building the workforce system. So here's the first question. Organizations collect a tremendous amount of people data today. What separates useful workforce planning data from noise?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Useful workforce data is connected to business decisions, and that's just like that should always be in mind when you're talking about data. Does it align with what our business decisions? Does it align with business goals? And organizations collect, like you were saying, a whole bunch of HR data, but not all of it is improving decision quality. So
Yeah,
we need the information that's going to help us make informed decisions. And that's the way to like focus that data, and have like that compass. You have to come with your hypotheses, right? Going back
yeah,
to research days. And so all the things that you think may be happening, all of the questions that you have, and then use the data to either the data supports it or it doesn't, and keep moving forward that way. Otherwise, you kind of just drown. You drown in
yeah.
all that data. Yeah.
That's a great point. And make like there's going to be tiers of data or layers of data that make the
Hmm.
most sense. Like maybe it's important to look at just simple financial to people data like revenue
Hmm.
per employee or profit
Yeah.
per employee, and you're tracking that. Then you get down to the element of quality of hire, attrition, and what are we doing to
Hmm.
retain that gets up to that layer and tie it to that financials and how it impacts that revenue per employee or revenue per profit.
Exactly.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that does cut through the noise when you organize that way. But then back to it, your key point is it's a discipline. So then
Hmm.
building that cadence, getting an agreement that this is it's working. So
Yeah.
the next question, what are the most important signals leaders should monitor to make better workforce decisions?
I think leaders should focus less on those isolated HR metrics and more on workforce system indicators. And by that, I mean
Mm,
like signals like regrettable attrition, instead of just attrition in general. Um, Maybe internal mobility flow, promotions, it has a lot of information there when it comes to promotions. Performance, critical skills. I think that's something that we don't utilize enough. Those
yeah,
very specialized skills, because those become very regrettable attritions when they leave. And so we need to look at those skills that are, either difficult to source, difficult to hire, or really expensive, or just like plan that out and look at that. Vacancy aging, that's also another one I think is a good signal to
yeah.
monitor. Um, yeah, and just workforce cost trends, relative to revenue and operational output, I think is a good umbrella for that. Yeah.
Yeah, skills-based hiring is trending right now. And I think just because
Mhm.
we have this multi-generational workforce and We've got lots of experience on one end and typical entry level, junior level on the other end. And one of our clients that was doing it well was actually, we went and helped them with knowledge management. So a certain percentage of their population was nearing retirement age, and this was in the engineering team. And so they wanted to make sure they were capturing this skilled knowledge before it left the organization, as an example to what we were just saying here. Identifying or isolating those really key things that are going to impact, going back to the top, revenue, profit, right? Retaining the right people.
Yeah, and looking at the trends, monitor the trends. So not just snapshots, but like look at how these things are changing over time. The historical data helps you build predictive data. So that's also really important.
So historical data helps you build predictive data. So give us an example if it's a seasonal thing or.
Exactly. So I know like, 2020 up until maybe 2022, 2023, that was very unique times. But like before that, or even after that, if we're tracking attrition, for example, we can start to see over trends. Let's pretend like, attrition starts to spike around bonus times, let's say. And then if you can see that as a trend, that's a trend that's happening, that's happened 4, 5, 6 years in a row, then you can bet that it's going to happen again the next year. So what are we going to do about it? And so that's what I mean by like historical data, those historical trends. Once you start to notice those patterns, helps you start to get more proactive and helps you to see into the future. Like, okay, this happened. There's a 90%, chance that this will happen again. What are we going to do to make sure it doesn't hit us as hard, or we retain more of those of the workforce that we need, so we can continue to grow. So that's what I mean by historical and predictive.
So that's great. So it kind of ties in. So if I'm an organization, you've helped to build dashboards that connect workforce data to operational and financial realities. So what makes a dashboard actually useful for leadership decision making? So maybe that, to keep with the example, what you were saying right then, in terms of knowing the seasonality, how does that become a dashboard and how do we make better decisions from it?
Yeah, so it goes back to what I was saying, like a useful dashboard, just like with everything else, it helps leaders make decisions faster with greater confidence, right? And so it needs to be aligned with business goals. So the dashboards that they usually fail are like overloaded with metrics that are not connected to business goals. Like they're filled with stuff that, leadership don't really care about, or it's just not important to their bottom line. So so the dashboards that work, like they tend to be simple, right? So all the complex things can be going on in the background, but the display, what you're displaying is simple and easy to read. They connect workforce trends to like operational and financial impact. So that bottom line that we were talking about. And you can spot those trends easily. So if you're showing it in a simple way, you can spot the trends easily. You can see the risk areas quickly, and then they spark better questions and better conversations. So if leaders looking at my dashboard and they're just like, oh, okay, I see it, the spike in attrition, like how we were saying around bonus times, like that should be easy to see on a dashboard. And then I wanted to also inspire them and spark them to ask a follow-up question, like, okay, we see this happening, especially at this time, especially within this department. What can we do to? And then that's the question I want to hear. What is the action that we're going to take? So they just, leadership, in my opinion, just need clarity around, what's changing and why it matters, and actions to be considered.
So so you're leading into my next question, kind of what are the thresholds or decision makers that help leaders know when to slow hiring, when to redeploy talent, when to rethink workforce investments? You talked a little bit about mobility, you talked about promotions. There's a lot of moving levers here. And each one can have its own ramification or impact based upon being pulled. So what are some of the decision triggers you've seen in your experience that where leaders have made good decisions because they were watching the data close enough and knowing when to make those decisions?
Yeah, so I think that the strongest organizations define triggers collaboratively. So across those like those main, key stakeholders that we were talking about. So like HR,
Mhm.
when I say HR, it's not just like the managers or directors. I mean like business partners. I'm talking people, analysts, like myself, consultants, finance, of course, not just the financial leaders, but also the analysts as well, because they're in the data. Um,
Mhm.
and like talent acquisition is extremely important because they know everything that's going on in terms of like candidates coming in, and they know the layout of what the workforce currently looks like. And I think that that's important
Yeah.
information. And so when all of those key groups are together, then, if labor costs exceed a certain threshold, or if, critical vacancies remain open too long, or attrition, rises above a certain threshold, they'll know. And this
Mhm.
this reduces like that emotional or like purely reactive decision making, because I think right now we're kind of making decisions from vibes and not and not like, yeah, and it's not
Right.
data driven. So once we're collaborative all together, instead of working in those silos, like we were saying, collaborative all together, and then seeing all of our different information that we govern come together and talk to each other, then we can, like, talent acquisition can say, um, oh, you said that you wanted 5 hires, or you said 5 hires, and then now you're saying 10 hires. And this is what it looks like when it comes to those kinds of skills. They're going to be extremely hard to source for. And,
Right.
typically it takes us like, I don't know, 70 days to find somebody that's good enough to go through through
Right.
the pipeline. And then finance can say, okay, well, we have money for this and we don't have money for that. This is the budget. This is where we can move things around. And then when we're having those conversations together, it becomes a more strategic and less like, I feel like this is happening, so I'm just going to do this. And then, at the end of the day, we see nothing is matching. We overhired, we overspent, and
Right.
because we weren't talking to each other. So, yeah.
You're bringing up some past memories. My first part of my
Yeah.
career was in talent acquisitions, so I remember those days where we would overhire and you would just hire this great person, and next thing you know, they're going
hmm
out the door 2 months later, and it's just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But you brought up the vibe part, and I take that back to my gut feeling idea too. So unfortunately, a lot of leaders are trained to hire with their gut feeling, which is no good as flipping
Mm,
the coin. But gut feelings are actually very useful if you have good data in front of you. And
yeah.
oftentimes there's two decisions that could potentially look correct. And that's where
Yeah.
the gut, or let's call it now the vibe
Yeah.
feeling,
Right.
that's going to help you. Having the data will help you then get to
Yeah.
an actual decision. And that's where your instincts then should kick in, or your intuition should be used. So yeah, very, very interesting to see that apply across the workforce planning piece as well. So in the age of AI, we better talk about AI because we said this in the era of AI. In the age of AI, if orgs only change one thing about how they approach workforce planning after this webinar, what should
Mm.
it be?
Yeah, just stop treating workforce planning as a periodic reporting and start treating it as a dynamic intelligence system. So,
I love
like
that.
we,
Dynamic intelligence system. That's great.
thank you. So we know that AI like dramatically improves our ability to, identify patterns. AI is really good at that. Modeling, analysis as well. But AI just can't replace our judgment. It can't replace our gut feelings, and
Yeah.
um, and the strategic direction we want to go in. And another thing about AI in just like the HR space, um, we're a little bit different than other types of analysts. like finance, we're different from sales, and just like HR analytics specifically, like I said, we work with extremely sensitive people information that we don't want to be in AI. It's just not good ethics.
Yeah.
It's not good data governance, right? So it's not best practice at all. So in terms of using AI, we're a little bit limited to like one-off projects instead of fully integrating AI. Even if we had like the best, which we don't, or even if we had like the best, cleanest like HR information or talent information, letting AI just kind of run with it is is a really difficult argument to make when it comes to HR
Yeah.
information, comes to people information. So one-off analysis is great for people analysts and people analytics, like in general, to help you plan and or to help you with like coding sequence or like whatever, like those like more smaller chunks, AI is perfect for that. But in terms of like actually demising AI to do all of the cool things we wanted to do
Yeah.
in HR analytics, I just don't see it. I don't
Not right
see
now.
it. No.
Yeah, I mean, and we could do a whole webinar on data privacy and data governance, right?
Hmm.
That you need to do that.
Yeah.
And to your point,
Yeah.
we've got to maintain that data carefully. And I guess that's using AI responsibly is what you're saying.
Exactly.
But it should be
Exactly.
used, and it's going to help you, probably find greater efficiencies in the analysis piece of it.
Hmm.
So let's talk about then, we've got a mix of HR leaders that are probably watching this with a mix of budgets, and some have a people analytics team, some don't. And
Yeah.
so I kind of want to give them a perspective. So what's kind of the lower budget or price point way to do people analytics without having to go out and buy some of these really robust systems you can use, but they cost a lot. And so it'd be hard
Yeah.
for some HR leaders to build that business case. What's kind of the price point way to do this where they can still get meaningful data and it's not requiring still, a lot of cost or a lot of complication formulas that they can still get it done on a regular cadence, whether it's monthly or quarterly. Maybe what would that look like?
Yeah, so like some of the really expensive data warehouses, like, like Databricks or Snowflake, for example,
Right.
are really great with integrating, those siloed systems that we were talking about and putting them in one place, having that one source of truth
Mm-hmm.
to then visualize on. But if we are trying to create a data warehouse on a budget, I mean, Excel is still very, very useful. It's still very prominent. Uh, it's still very compatible with so many different systems.
Mm.
So you can consolidate all of the different reports from all those different systems into an Excel sheet or a Google sheet or something,
Mm-hmm.
and visualize that and use that as like your poor man's data warehouse.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for like quick and easy, something to hit the ground running with, I would say just a regular Excel or CSV, something like that, where you can export or extract different reports from all those different systems and put them in that one
Yeah.
place.
Without even Power BI is what you're saying. You can use Excel to be
Yeah,
that
you can.
depository.
Yeah, and then you can use something like Power BI because I know it comes with like that Microsoft Suite, right? So if you're a
Uh-huh.
Microsoft Suite organization, you can use Power BI to do more complicated visualizations instead of just using Excel. Excel can be like the warehouse, right? And then you connect that to Power BI, for example, and then you visualize what you're seeing. So you're showing the aggregated charts and tables and things like that from everything that you've put together in your Excel report. And then you can also do those calculations, more complex calculations in there too. You can do statistics in there as well to do your
Yeah.
comparisons in there. So if you're really trying to hit the ground running, you can go that avenue, and it is very cost effective.
we had to geek out a little bit and get a little
Yeah.
more technical to make sure those listening, if they weren't sure how to piece that together. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So last
Yeah.
question, and I think this is an important one. Can workforce planning improve employee engagement?
Yes, I do think it can improve employee engagement. I will say, like in my experience, uh, especially with organizations that have gone through layoffs, one of the things that I see, like this huge morale killer, would be those layoffs. And so I'm looking at responses about uh, employees feeling like, oh, they don't have confidence in their organization. They don't know why they have been here for 20 years or whatever, and they've been working and they don't see the point of doing that anymore if, their colleague can just be dismissed like that. Like,
Sure.
how can you dismiss, my team, most of my team, and we've been here for
Yeah,
a long time. We've been working so hard, we've been so engaged, and now
sure.
everyone's gone. And so now I feel like I have to look out for myself. And now I am disengaged at work and focused on trying to find a new opportunity,
Hmm.
or just don't feel like I should work as hard because, tomorrow I could be gone. And just I see that all the time. And I think if organizations had a more rigorous approach to workforce planning and integrated uh, people analytics with that, to help them, then and then help them reduce those layoffs, I don't think that they would be seeing as much
Yeah,
of disengaged workforce.
I like
They
that.
track it now. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the term intention and intelligence into
Hmm.
building the rigor
Hmm.
in their workforce planning. So then people are feeling seen, heard, right? They're being cared for. And I think
And
that's a great
safe.
way and
Yeah.
safe, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to end this on the significance and importance of strategic workforce planning in the age of AI. So um, before I sign off here, Timmy,
Mhm.
in preparation for this, I'm going to let everybody know in preparation for this, we happened upon a podcast called HR Leaders, and it was sponsored by This Year, and it was some really
Yeah.
key people analytics leaders talking about this very topic. It goes a little bit deeper. So we're going to provide that link as a resource. So when you come back to watch this on demand, there will be a link for that resource as well. But Timmy, thank you so much for sharing your
No
knowledge
problem.
with us and covering this very important topic.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much for having me, Brandon.
And you are so welcome. And so just to remind everybody, brighttalent.com, resources, click on webinars. That's where you'll find this on demand. And this is where you'll find future webinars as well. So thank you all for watching. Have a great day.